Are you ready to be connected? You're listening to the Insured Connection podcast by Pica Group, a pro assurance company, where we provide expert advice for your practice when you need it most. We connect you with industry leaders to discuss timely topics so you can listen, learn, and get back to caring for your patients. Now, let's connect.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. I'm your host, Dr. Adrianne Ross, and we come to you from the Insured Connection, our podcast here. And thank you so much for continuing to follow and like us. We try really hard to bring you just really interesting guests that can give you different perspectives, not all physicians and attorneys, and, just not all specifically related just to malpractice, but opening your eyes to maybe other things that you're interested in. So, for instance, our guest tonight or today is Miss Kelly Heinen, and she's going to be talking to us a little bit about, financial advice in a sense. And I'm going to have her go into a little bit more depth. And this is just going to scratch the surface and a little bit about what she does, because so often we are trying to build teams around us and advisors, so that we can kind of plot our course appropriately. And she would definitely be somebody who I would include as part of my team. So with that, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. And that's such a compliment to be part of your team. I would figuratively strive to be in that quiver. So I'm excited to be here, and it's an honor.
No, definitely. Well, go ahead and tell our audience who you are and a little bit about what you do. And also, please include a little bit of your fun background of how you've been linked within podiatry as well.
So it's a left turn kind of story. It's not a very efficient strategy. So I do financial planning now. I help young professionals, clients. I've really leaned into healthcare, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I worked in medical device for 15 years for a very large company. I studied finance out of college, and then 2 suitcases in a backpack and a 5-hour flight later, I landed in Hawaii and had a great time. And I decided to defer my very responsible financial job for 6 months, and then it became a year. And then my roommate was a contracting nurse, and she said, "You'd be really good in medicine." So she introduced me to some friends, and then I ended up in med device for 15 years. So, and then ended up coming back to California. I'm based in Los Angeles, from San Diego, but ended up coming back, and COVID hit, and I realized that a lot of my physician friends, partners, colleagues like that I was working with really didn't have a full grasp on their own financial lives. Yes. And so I found I was trying to I was asking them questions, and they were like, "I'm not sure." I'm like, "What?" So I realized that I had a different calling. And so I was listening to the podcast recently, and I just feel like sometimes you're where you're supposed to be. Sometimes you don't necessarily know the journey that you're on, but I definitely feel like I'm exactly where I was meant to be.
Well said. You're actually pretty succinct in that response, actually. So bravo you.
I've thought about it a lot.
Yeah, that's
the end up here.
I like that. I'll have to tighten up my speech. That's great. What I will ask is, the clients that you typically help, are they usually young practitioners, or do you kind of get a little bit of everybody, kind of a hodgepodge?
So I would say it's becoming a hodgepodge. I think that the more that I've been doing this, I think that a lot of, quite frankly, some of the physicians I used to work with, and in podiatry, for example, they're like, "Oh, wow, okay, so this really stuck for you." Right? So I think at first it was like that science experiment of I was helping them in the OR. They thought maybe I would come back. So yeah, so I learned about myself that kind of every 3.5 years, I wanted to try something new. And I think it's that Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour itch, right? And so it's about 3.8 years. And so I found myself trying to master foot and ankle after starting in sports. And so that was where I've met all these amazing physicians and podiatrists. And I connected with Dr. Ciccinelli, at the Western a few years ago. And I was like, wait, what are you doing? And he's like, what are you doing? So it was this like fun master of like, the worlds colliding. And so here I am.
Well, I know a question that I get asked all the time, whether it's residents or fellows or practitioners that have been out for 10 plus years, 20 plus years, they'll ask, okay, so why do I need, somebody helping me kind of plan my financial future? It sounds silly to say because we plan for everything else, but it seems like they almost have to be convinced, so what is your response to that? Like, where does this fit in, especially for physicians?
Like what you're hearing? Go ahead and subscribe so you never miss an episode again. Now, let's continue to connect on today's topic.
Yeah, so I think it's two things. I think young practitioners need to set up a foundation that's secure. So I think that that's really important. I think that there's a lot of stress, and there's a lot of stats that show that 70% of Americans have financial anxiety. So it's massive. So you couple that with the need for control, right? And so you want control and anxiety and all these other things. And so I would say for young professionals, it's just about setting yourself up with success. And like, what are the key tools to do that? Emergency fund, right? Disability insurance is important. Thinking about like, oh, you're going to be traveling a lot, so maybe our emergency fund needs to be more, or now you've got all these student loans. And so that compounds. And so then by the time they get out, then they're looking at offers and maybe it's not exactly what they thought. But so I would say on the young professional side, my job is to help them see the vision, right? Like, what does that look like? And the little steps and the small steps. It's really hard to explain compounding money to someone. That compounding rate of return, right? That a penny a day can turn into $1 million if it doubles every day for 30 days. Like, that's impossible to explain.
Yep.
So I think that that's really key for young professionals. I would say the things that I am fixing today is COVID stuff, right? Like, oh, I can't see clients. So now I'm betting on stocks. And so all of a sudden, like, you get super heavily invested in one asset class, and now your portfolio in one day can drop 30%. So like, I think some of those things is like, we spend 40, 60 hours a week doing this while you guys are busy doing your lives. And so sometimes it's like the implications of taxes, like not necessarily knowing how it works. Every state has a different piece. So I think the value in that, and quite frankly, I think a lot of times I just end up being a financial therapist where
I'm sure you do.
I'm helping like people like navigate like what you learned about money and what your spouse learned, and like how do we come together and how do we create strategies that solve what you want. And most of the time I have clients, especially if they're in a relationship, one's a saver, one's a spender, and they fight about it all the time. So my job is to help them like create an environment that they can be successful. Right. I think that intent is one thing, but people, what do they say? 1% of the population writes down their goals.
Yeah.
Which is wild to think about. But so we try to captivate, like, what are they trying to design? And then create an environment that they can succeed.
Yeah, so it's funny. I had a conversation with my estate planning attorney.
Oh, yep,
And a lot of these things, so this came up. A lot of it came up, and you're talking about, okay, where your kids are going to go when you die, and if your spouse dies, if one of you dies. And I thought, God, this is really depressing. But it's even more depressing to think that if we don't talk about this, it's just going to happen, and it could happen. And now everything you've worked for is not protected, And so I guess, it's just really fascinating to me that that's the last thing we think about.
So, and it can be a very morbid conversation. It doesn't have to be, right? I have a 4-year-old, right? Like, I don't want to think about me not being on the planet, or what is he going to think about? So some of it is the reframe, right? I think about, frankly, like I think about life insurance like a love note. Like, it's my opportunity to give my family something that quite frankly, if you talk about it, it's morbid. There's also a way to make it a tool, right? I think the other thing is that it's highly unlikely that a dinosaur is going to eat me tomorrow. That's the truth, right? But he might eat my right arm. That's more likely, right? So some of these things, it's like, and the reality is you don't want to be looking in the rear view thinking I should have.
Mhm.
And I look at it more of like, we're so busy making a living, like we also have to make a life. And I think that's
Yeah.
so important for everyone, whether you're in the early stages of your career or you're just at the doorstep of like, saying goodbye to your practice and trying to figure out how to exit out of this after doing it for so many years.
Absolutely.
But like, it's way better to like think about it 5 years before you're exiting than like right at the doorstep.
Yeah, I talk to a lot of residents about this on a regular basis, even the students, and saying, okay, have you planned your exit strategy? And I always get this blank stare of going, hey doc, I'm just getting started. I'm like, no, but that doesn't mean you don't think about your exit strategy, and it's just we think so much about how can we maximize our income, but not
Mhm.
protecting the income,
Right.
and how do we get the right job, but what does it look like for us to transition out of that? So I heard you speak obviously in California, and you're just very good at what you do, and very personable. And so I love bringing you onto the show, and for you to just really kind of show who you are and humanize the conversation, honestly. Because
I
it
mean,
can be
it
very
can be very
human.
morbid when you're just like starting to set stuff up for
Yep.
people. They're like, wait,
Yep.
what?
Yeah, but I mean, you mentioned even like disability insurance. I had gone through an injury when I was training an understudy, so to speak, for in Taekwondo. And that has been my sport since I was like 6 years old, and thought I'm never going to get injured. And then all of a sudden, you get in your 40s and now you're injured.
Yep.
And it happened in between a gap of when I had insurance and when I didn't. We were changing insurance, and it happened at that period, and thankfully I had disability insurance, but to that point, and our hands are our livelihood. So it was a really good lesson to learn. But I just thought about that when you mentioned disability insurance as well.
Want to receive a monthly newsletter with topics from the Insured Connection? Head over to picagroup.com/Insured Connection and join our email list to have it delivered right to your inbox.
Yeah, I look at disability, it's income projection. Like my whole life runs because I can see clients. My life doesn't work if I'm not seeing clients. And sometimes it's, um, I think sometimes it's like as silly as I was trying to save money. This is a short story, but I was trying to save money and I was thinking about a new car and interest rates are high. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And my mom doesn't really drive, and she's got a 1985 Volvo that works great. And it's like in her driveway. And I'm like, hey, mom, can I borrow your car for a couple of weeks? I'm going to like bridge this gap. And I know that this sounds so silly, but it didn't like hit me until I'm driving on the 110 freeway towards downtown Los Angeles, and I'm going 75 and the steering wheel is shaking. And I look down and I'm like, I don't have airbags. And I thought, how dumb is this? Like, how dumb am I? Right. So I got to the office and I called and I'm like, can I have my DI? And so like, I just thought like, what are the chances that somebody slams on the brakes and I'm not able to stop fast enough? And like, what does that look like? And I think that people forget like our lives work, our house works on our income.
Yeah.
Right. And so most
Mhm.
people think their biggest asset is their house or whatever it is, their wealth or this or 401k. It's actually not. It's your ability to keep working.
Wow,
So,
well said.
so I think that that's the piece where it's like some of the, and there's a lot of benefits for residents and med students to get it at very, advantageous rates and discounts, and every carrier has some sort of schlick that they'll do. So I think it's important, and it
Mhm.
shouldn't be cost prohibitive.
Mhm.
Right. Like, I think that that's one of the things, as long as you lock in your health early versus like you wait too long and then it's not attainable.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, okay, very informative. Why don't you wrap us up in giving us just maybe a couple of general tips and pearls, for those of us that maybe aren't as familiar with having maybe a financial planner or whatnot.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is try to automate as much as you can. So most employers will allow you to auto save into two different accounts. Most people don't know that, but you can actually put it into your checking and then into your savings as well.
No.
So I find that for spenders that it's hard for them to save the more that they can automate things. So direct deposit into emergency fund, make sure that you're setting up that what your employer is offering. So most people forget that they're getting a 403b or a 401k and their employer is matching. If you don't sign up, you're just walking away from free dollars. So that would be most things. And then remember to ask, especially about like, you want to get rid of high interest debt first. Most advisors can't make you 26% on credit cards anywhere. So just know that those are the things that they're going to ask. But also like for student loans, there's a lot of people out there that are going to help you. We're going to do another WebEx with some student loans. There's been a lot of changes recently. So number one is like automate what you can. Number two is like if any high interest debt, try to get rid of that. And then leverage those employer sponsored plans. Remember to keep your eyes on like the big rocks that are far away, because when you're in the trenches, it's really hard to cherish where you are. But just give in to that, because there's tender mercies and it's a journey wherever you're going. So you just have to remember, like, I will remember this in 5 years from now and be thankful that I did these things. So, and then I guess lastly is like avoid the lifestyle creep. So that's the piece where it's like we live in this society that's very focused on keeping up with this or that. And it's really easy to spend money on Amazon or on Instagram. So just know like there's a way that you can always keep yourself in check. And so happy to help in whatever way I can. So feel free to reach out, ask questions. I'm happy to.
Wonderful. Well, Kelly, thank you. This was incredibly enlightening. We will go ahead and we'll put this podcast on all of our lines and all of our platforms so that anyone who's interested in reaching out to her, feel free. You can go ahead and do so, or to contact us if you need any more information. But Kelly, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, I know, to be able to come and talk to us. And I'm sure we will be hearing from you very soon.
Thank you.
And that's it for this week's episode. But let's continue connecting. If you're enjoying the Insured Connection, don't forget to leave a review on your streaming platform and subscribe now so you can connect with us each time we post a new episode. To stay connected with us throughout the week and to tell us topics we should discuss on future episodes, go to picagroup.com/Insured Connection.